Hey, what's up everyone? So today is gonna be a full overview of armies and of accounts. And I want to start with the basic stuff so that everyone can be on the same page, and then show you guys what I think of what are the best options for quick armies, what are the options for most efficient, what are the best option for most potential like damage you can do on a village, etc. And so what I did is basically take each unit at level 0, how much damage it deals, level 20, with weapon, total cost, crop consumption with HDT for EI and CC. So instead of 3 and 4 crop, it becomes 20. And now off value basically is strength divided by the cost, strength at level 20, strength with weapon, and basically that's it. As you can see that for goals, the best unit is swords. Obviously it's always gonna be infantry, not cavalry. For Teuton it's clubs, and then it's axe, and you can see that the axe is still better than swords. And finally it's Imperial for Romans. Now I think most of you don't, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you really want to value the units, you have to account for the crop. And what do I mean by that? So swords, it's an infantry, it consumes 1 per hour, so per day it consumes 24. So 295 plus 24, one day the cost will be 319, the second day 343. And so if you add the crop consumption every day, basically the cost will increase and the value will decrease. Okay, makes sense? And so you add this to each unit, and I did the same for EI and EC with the HDT. So crop is equal to 2, crop equal to 3. And now what I want you to see is that the highest valued unit is obviously clubs. Everyone knows that clubs are OP in the early game, are OP in general, they're so fast to produce. But is it the same, let's say after 10 days, at the same after 15 days? The longer the server goes, what happens to the value? All right, because the crop consumption is something not taken into consideration by a lot of players. And so looking at, let's compare clubs and axe just for an idea. So if I'm looking to mass produce and crash consistently, do a lot of operation, obviously clubs, the value is always going to be higher in the beginning, and then you send after, I don't know, 1 week, 2 weeks, it's going to be great and you're going to produce a lot. Axes are slower to produce, but still only after 3 days you can see that the value of axes becomes better than clubs. But this isn't really an indicator, it just says that in terms of crop efficiency, obviously axes are better, but clubs, we all know that clubs are so fast to produce. So technically, if you have a quick operation to prepare for, always go for clubs, not for axe. Axe, however, just by looking at this, that after only 3 days, the value of axes is better than clubs. It means if you want to build the World Wonder Hammer, axes, you can get so many axes and still have like a way to manage your crop deficiency easily, simply because of that. And already, like, you can look after 20 days, there's almost 0.02 value difference already, and it only increases over time. All right. Anyway, the second thing I want to look at is EI versus EC, and you can see that it always will be EI better than EC. At any point, at any time, EIs are always better than EC in terms of value. Alright, and now you can see I've put some markers like yellow, green, whatever. I'm comparing when, for example, TTs become less efficient than EI, for example. You can see also after day 3. Comparing TK and EI, you can see that TK was the best option in the beginning, then EI becomes better after day 5, I believe it's day 7. And then, yeah, so basically you can compare these and check them out on your own. You can pause the video and check them. I'm just gonna scroll a bit down and you can see the values. And then I was like, okay, I did a formula which Haim, shout out to Haim because he helped me with this. And I wanted to check when exactly, after how many hours, how many days does axe become better than clubs. And this is axe with great barracks, TK without great stable. So no great stable is involved. And you can see, excuse me, so this is clubs, the value is always higher in the beginning. But after a certain point, axes, which is this line, becomes way better and always stays better than clubs, the value. And so I'm gonna scroll down. Okay, this is the value here. So after 190 hours, you can see the value here. This is axes, this is clubs. Look before, 16171, 16173. So clubs are still better. 16156, 16155. So after 190 hours, what does that mean? So you produced one unit, and TKs and whatever, you're producing them non-stop. After 190 hours, the value and the efficiency of having an axe army versus a club army becomes better. So if you have an axe army, it becomes better, okay? Just an important indicator, which is about 8 days. For those who are interested in being efficient or whatever, it's interesting to know. Moving on. So taking these values, now I wanted to see how can I decide which army is the best? What is the factor? Do I say how fast can I make like produce off strength? Is that the factor? So I tried to see how it looks, and I said, okay, what's the fastest way to get to 10 million off strength? And basically clubs with TK without with no great stable. And you can see that it takes about 1188 hours. Obviously, if I'm gonna add great stable, it's gonna be faster, but cavalry ratio will increase because now I have great stable producing, and infantry ratio will decrease. Is it something good, something bad? We'll talk about it later. And then I did the same axe with TK. You can see 1350 hours. Compared to this, it's about 160 hours more. And so these are basic information to show you the speed at which you can produce 10 million of strength. And I'm not gonna talk about each one of them, you can see them. This is Teutons with GS, Poles, no GS, swords plus TP, infantry helmet, 1871 hour. Look at the difference, it's almost like 600, 700 difference in terms of hours. When you add GS, it's lower. This is swords and hate one instead of swords plus TT with GS. And now cavalry helmet, swords plus TT with GS. Alright, these are all the options you can do. Hate one. And then Roman infantry helmet, Imperial EI with GS. Imperial EC, Imperial EC, and then cavalry helmet, Imperial EI with GS, Imperial EI. And you can pause the video and check the speed and compare. Obviously the quickest is clubs, that's no news, everyone knows that. But I was wondering, okay, well the quickest is obviously clubs and we all know that, but what about managing this account? Like, how does it look like? Does it require a lot of resources? Do you need a lot of villages to do it? Do you need a lot of crap to do it? What do you need to maintain an account like this? And so already I can show you this. This is a formula which indicates at the end of the building that 10 million, you have 141k crop deficit, minus 141k on your account. But if you compare, for example, with Axis, it's 111k, so there's 30k difference in crop per day. Excuse me, not per day, per hour. So per day, this is like, let me do a formula here. So this minus, okay. And then per day, it's gonna be this multiplied by 24, which is about 730k res per day additional. So this is an important thing to note. Like if you're a governor, each village is producing about 4,000, maybe 4,200 resources. Imagine how many villages you need. Maybe you have to spend a lot of, what's it called? Stolen goods. You have to loot a lot to get these values, which is quite a lot, about 1 million per day. All right, on an X1 speed. This is all on an X1 speed. And so I thought, okay, maybe now the factor should be resource instead of only speed. And so that's it. 2 tons, 25% infantry, 3% cavalry. This is because of the fealty. 100 days production. You can see at the end of the building this army, you're gonna have about 410k crop deficit, like minus 410k on your account, which is insane. And so it requires 180 million res to produce. And what do I mean by that? I mean wood, clay, and iron. And I did the same thing, 180, 181 for each of these. So the amount of days are gonna be slightly different, but the amount of res is gonna be the same. So I wanted to check in terms of crop, which is gonna be highest, which is gonna be lowest, and how is the total off gonna look like, and how much are you gonna deal damage versus 2 million death phalanxes. I still want to point out one thing, is that I had one more question. So having more infantry ratio, like for example here, no GS with GS, I technically have 14% less infantry, but in terms of total off, if I produce the same amount of hours, obviously I'm gonna have more off here. So the question is now, is it better to have more off even if you have less infantry ratio? Because if you look at the stats of phalanxes, they're better versus cavalry. And if I'm producing with GS, basically I'm increasing my cavalry. So now the phalanxes stat is better. So the question is it better or not? And look, no GS, you have 5 million almost off strength with cavalry. And if you go with level 20 great stable, you have 10 million, so an additional 5 million, all right? And you can see here you had 22% cavalry ratio, here it's 36. But what happens is, look, 22% versus 36 cavalry. If we scroll, 22%, so this is 22% cavalry. One phalanx unit has this defensive stats, 42.2. If you go to 36, he has 43.6, so it's stronger versus more cavalry. So technically, when we are increasing the cavalry ratio, the def provided by each phalanx is increasing. And so the total def by these 2 million phalanxes is also increasing. So I was wondering, is it better or not? And I figured, and I discovered that, look, you would deal 27.4% damage to that village or wonder or whatever it is, versus 32.4 if it was with great stable level 20. So the first discovery was it's always better to produce with the great stable no matter the army, and this is the same for every single tribe. And the same thing applies if you're, let's say you're a Roman player, you're playing EI or EC. Is it better to have great barracks? Yes, it's always better to have great barracks as well. All right, so this is the most important factor. And if you've seen my latest def video, you would see that I would say depending on how much res per hour you have, you decide on the barracks level, etc, etc. And the same applies here. So maybe you won't be able to get great stable level 20 because your account isn't super developed. Well, build great stable level 16 or 12 or 14 or whatever the level is that you can sustain, and work on it. And having a little bit more is gonna, like just having level 8 is gonna increase about 1.3, 1.4. So any additional units you can produce is always gonna be better, whether it's great stable or great barracks, no matter the infantry or cavalry ratio. All right. Now the second thing I wanted to see is each of these. I'm gonna scroll down first so you can pause the video whatever you want. 2-ton axes, Roman EC, Roman EI, swords plus TT infantry helmet, swords plus Haid 1, swords plus TT cavalry helmet, swords plus hey one. Okay. And so I put on the right here the amount of crop deficit you have at the end of this production. All right. And so ranking which are the most expensive in terms of crop, you can already see clubs, then axe, TT plus sword, cavalry helmet, sword plus TT, infantry helmet, it's almost the same. Swords plus Haid 1 plus swords, EI, EC. EC is the most efficient in terms of crop. What does that mean? So if you're playing and you know how to sim, you know how to prepare your villages and whatever, you can get 300k, 320k on average. This is what most people would do. As a good governor player, easily if you're going EC. It's doable, but the only issue with this is that technically EC are the most expensive unit in game. And what do I mean by that? If we go back to basic stats, EC, where is it? Okay, so one unit is 1.2k. It's almost like Rams, which is kind of insane. And not to mention that in the beginning, before you get HTT level 20, it's also 4 crops. So technically in the early game / mid game, it's kind of rough to sustain EC production. You have to have a good account, a lot of villages, well developed, HTT level 20 to have less crop consumption, etc. so that you can actually, get this. Same goes for EI, but instead of HTT level 20, you need HTT level 15 at least. And so, while this is obviously the best, however, to build this account, you have to be ready. When you start spamming these units, you need to have enough HTT level, you need to have enough villages to sustain it, okay? But this is the cheapest in terms of crop. Now, the second question is damage dealt. And you can see clubs, axe, swords, EI and EC are almost at the end. The only worst part is Haid 1 plus swords as a gold player if you go cavalry helmet. Damage per crop, and you can see that axe is the best army, EI are the second, EC third, clubs fourth, and then you have the combination of golds if you go infantry helmet or cavalry helmet. And so now we have a better idea, but still I would think this, because we have 410k, this isn't good. We need to find a way to manage an account not only with crop or not only with time. We need to have exactly the same, so we have to add addition the total res and the crop together, and this is where we start focusing on total res. For example, 650, part of it is from crop, part of it is from total res. All right, so this is where we're gonna focus on, because this is what you should account for. Before going there, I want to show you something. If you're building a club's army, and as I said, it's always better to have great stable or great barracks permanently producing level 20. So this is with great barracks and great stable, and I've kept these ratio, which is 25% infantry or 3% if it's infantry helmet, and if it's cavalry helmet, it's 25% cavalry helmet, 3% infantry, because of the fealty. So what I want you to focus on is how much additional crop consumption you're adding per day. All right, already we can see clubs is always going to be the most, simply because you produce a lot of clubs per day. Like, look at the comparison, 2,367 versus 1.4 almost, so almost 1k additional, so 1k crop additional per day. And so this is why you can see there's almost 1k difference here. Empyrean, there's about 1.5k, almost 1.5k. Swords, there's almost 1.2k, plus the fact that TTs produce slower than TKs, so it's more. And so you can already see clubs is always gonna be stacking crop and resources basically faster than any other tribe and any other army. If you go clubs, you have to consider this. Every day you're gonna be adding 4,000 almost resources per hour. Axes 3.2, Let's see which one is the lowest. You can find swords plus TT infantry helmet is the lowest in terms of crop addition, like consumption. And then the second one would be EI. This one. Oh no, actually TT plus sword with cavalry helmet. And then EI. Alright? Pretty interesting to see. So keep in mind, the most expensive is gonna be clubs, the cheapest is gonna be golds, swords plus TT or TT plus sword, whatever. And the next one is gonna be EI. Alright, in terms of crop consumption additional. So now moving on, we set the benchmark, like how to compare basically by giving 650 million on your whole army, which is gonna be partly crop consumption and total raw res. What I mean by raw res is wood, clay, and iron, right? And so clubs, you can see that most of the res are basically due to crop, and we already saw why. Then axes, it's gonna be like about 50 million more in terms of raw res, simply because each axe unit is more expensive than clubs, but a still relatively high crop, 50 million difference here, which is counterfeited here. EI, you can see it costs more raw res to produce, but way less crop. And in a way, this is better overall, I would say. Why is it better? Because you don't, it's easier to manage in the late game. Like when you start having like minus 170k crop deficit or 200k crop deficit or whatever the number is, let's say with clubs, if you look at an EI account, it's gonna be 100k less. So while a club account is gonna be 200k crop deficit, this guy is gonna be 100k deficit. And who do you think is easier to manage? This guy is gonna be using NPC or has to have a big account, whatever it is, while this guy is just chilling, right? And EC, you're gonna see the same thing, a little bit more in terms of crop consumption, but a little bit less in terms of raw res. And now looking at goals, you can see this was the cheapest. It's in the middle between EI and clubs, or EI and axes. And also same thing, it's also in the middle between EI and clubs in terms of raw res. And so these are a nice indicator. But how do we make sense of them? It's basically to see the amount of res per hour needed for this account. So at the end, when you produce this army, which is 650 million total res, for example, for clubs, it's gonna be about 150k clubs, 27k TKs, 9k rams. At the end, this is gonna be the total cost you have to manage. Axes at the end is gonna be 286, 234, 266, and you can see swords, as we said before, it's the cheapest, so on and so forth. However, is this doable? Like, can you make 650 million total res with these? Let's look. When should we start? The date to start, and you see here. Okay, so if you start at day 80 almost, you can make this happen, the club army. However, you have to use a lot of NPC at the end of it. Like, this is gonna be super hard to manage. And then you look at axes, if you start at day 50, I mean, this is doable, not gonna lie, because usually I see a lot of people like spamming from Great Barracks and Great Stable around day 50 or day 60, and they start catapult spamming before, or Rav's production before that date. So this is, to some extent, very doable, and I tried it and I started earlier, but I was a Duke, so it's not a reference. This is EI. It says day 28. I don't know how possible this is for governors. However, the thing about EI is that you have to be active. And what do I mean by that? You have to loot, oasis, farm lists, be super active, have good, robber camps for more resources, and so on and so forth. So maybe this is doable by experienced player. If not, if it's a governor, start later. You don't have to start at day 29. Maybe do it day 35, day 40, whatever. As long as you have enough villages and HTT level 15, it's gonna like be possible. I'm not gonna say it's gonna be easy, but possible. EC, it says day 42, 43. I think it's doable, especially for dukes and kings. For governors, maybe you have to start later, around the day 50 mark. Swords plus TT start day 16. I mean, I mean, this is a red flag. No one is gonna do this. I think it's no way, like impossible to produce from great stable, great barracks, and workshop all maxed out at day 16. There's no way, because usually you still have to produce a lot of villages before you are able to do this. Swords plus hate one, infantry helmet, swords plus TT cavalry helmet, also not possible. Maybe doable, but we're gonna see if this is the best option or not. So now that we know when to start and whether it's doable or not, and if it's not doable, basically you have to maybe start this at day 35 or 40 or whatever it is. But keep in mind this, we already know that this is the cheapest army to produce and to build and to manage in terms of crop and everything. So if you are able to, for example, start with Axe army at day, I don't know, 42, and if you are able to do this, then technically you should be able to start even earlier with the swords plus TT because it's less expensive. So maybe at day 36, I don't know. So just as a reference, always compare for, or even EI. If you look at this, like there's almost 20,000 difference in terms of resources, which is about 4 to 5 days. Wait, how many days? Let's say almost 3k, and we said 20. So about 6 to 7 days additional. Like, so if you were starting at day, let's say 28, you should be able to do it at 21, but this is not correct. It should be like day 35 or something, so this should be like day 29. So you can see how early you can start doing this army. Now let's look at the damage dealt and the total strength produced when you use this as a benchmark, 650 million. But keep in mind, as I said, this is not gonna be realistic to a lot of players. Same for this, same for this, same for this, same for this, and maybe even so this one. But I can tell you this is easily done. And so total strength for clubs 17.5 million, axes 24.2, which is the highest, and in some way it's the easiest one to do because it starts at day 50, and this is very easily done. And I'm gonna show you something else. You don't need 14.4k rams. Technically, if you have 10k or 11k even alone versus 2 million def, you're still gonna be able to destroy the wall and do your job. So you can start even earlier and not worry about having 14k rams. Maybe have 12k and it's gonna be enough. So yeah, this is by far the best one, the best army. Then you have EIs, but obviously it's not a reliable number because, as I said, it's hard to start at day 28 perma everything. You need to have more villages, you need to sim at least 10 more days or something like this. Then you have EC, which isn't the highest. Swords plus TT is the highest after EI, but it's not reliable, so technically this is better, obviously, and so on and so forth. You can see this, and I've shown you if these were all reliable, how much damage dealt you would do to the 2 million defense. And you can see also that the axes do the most, almost 21.2 million, EI do about 20, EC do about 18.6, clubs only do about 15.5, which is the lowest between all of them. So while you think that clubs are so easy to produce, so cheap, so fast, but as I said before, the issue with clubs over time is how expensive crop becomes, and it's so hard to manage. So if you want to go like a big World Wonder Hammer, I don't think clubs are the best way to go. Usually what people do is throughout the server they spam in clubs and they're being active and being part of operations non-stop. And then at the end of the server they start producing at day, I don't know, as we said before, day 80 or maybe even day 70, and the team is helping them store units, so most of this is decreased. So instead of having 430, maybe you have 390 or 370 or whatever it is. your team is helping you, storing the clubs at a different village, but still, as we see here, the total damage dealt is not as good as we think it is, alright? And so what I say now, since we figured that some of these numbers are not realistic, like 30, day 15, day 20, day 24, whatever it is, so what you should do then is decrease the total res. Maybe 500, maybe 550, maybe 580, whatever it is you decide to do. And I just wanted to show you the numbers for EI, starting day 55, it looks really good. 65 for EC, I think it's too much. So maybe between 42, 43 and 65, maybe at day 50, maybe at day 52, you can make it possible. And look at the total damage dealt versus level 20 phalanxes, about 14% or about 18.6. You're gonna be dealing in between these two numbers. This is really good. Same for AI, you're gonna definitely not 20%, but you're gonna be dealing between 15% and let's say 19 or 18%, which is also really good. I wouldn't look at axes at day 71 because we already talked about being able to do it at day 50, and having 21% is great. So what I'm trying to say, the best army by far for World Wonder attacks, sieges, is Axe Army. Not only is it possible in terms of when you should start, but to some extent it is the second most expensive, but still manageable, especially if someone will help you with, like, let's say 10k units, 20k units, storing them somewhere. And usually at the end of the server, a lot of dev players have lost their units or stored everything in the World Wonder, and maybe they can help you with 1k, 2k, each player can help. And so this becomes more realistic, like it becomes 260 maybe, and then it's easily doable to a lot of players. So I highly recommend, if you're ever gonna play World Wonder, like a huge army, always go for axes, because they do a lot of damage, and it's, to some extent you have to start late, and to some extent it's not easily managed, but it's not bad. If you go swords plus TT, you're not gonna be able to build as many units as you produce with axes, simply because, I mean, it says that you have to start day 16. However, you're gonna have like an easy time managing your account, simply because it's too cheap. Same goes for EI. It's super cheap to do. So if you decide to play EI or swords, always remember that because they're so cheap, you have to start as early as possible. And so if as I said before, if I'm starting as an axe army at day 50, EIs and swords plus TT, you have to start way earlier than day 50, just to produce as much units as possible. You're never gonna have the same amount of damage dealt, simply because axe units were made to attack World Wonder. This is their job. Like, it takes so much time to get a good army, but once you get it, and it's expensive also, once you get that army, you're gonna deal a lot of damage. Swords plus TT or EI, it takes more account management in terms of, for example, building HTT and making EI efficient. Instead of 3 crop per unit, then 2, and you have to be active with looting and attacking oasis and so on and so forth. Then you can make this happen, or day 30, day 35, whatever it is. Swords plus TT, if you also are active, you're looting a lot with the TT, you can't. The difference between these two is that EI are easy to attack oasis and maybe even robber camps, but TT are so weak as a unit to attack what's it called, the robber camps or the oasis, because if you look at the stats of the TT, it's so weak. Like, let's compare units. So even with weapon, it's 137, right? Look at EI, like, it's almost 40 difference. Look at TK, it's almost 70 difference. And look at Caesarius, it's almost 120 difference. So it's the weakest cavalry unit. And there's a reason for that. It's because they're super fast. And since they're super fast, your job, if you're doing this army, or the one with cavalry helmet, which is this, is to use TTs and do a lot of farm list. And the more farm list and the more resources you get, then this becomes easier, even easier than it is. And then if you do that, then maybe you can start day 20, 25 because you're using the TTs to their advantage. However, you can still not use them for Oasis and for robber camps. So EI's armies will always have access to more resources if they are active. Okay? I don't know if it makes sense. And so, yeah. I hope this was beneficial to all of you. I'm just gonna let you pause the video while I scroll down if you want to look at the values. So 650 million, scrolling to the right, you can see day of starting, damage dealt, etc. Infantry ratio, total strength, rest per hour, and I'm gonna re-show you these per hour additional every day you're producing. 500. Total damage. When you should start. And the last one for beginners, 350 million. Total damage dealt. Start of the production. And I think this is true wrong, so you should never do this. If you're new and you want to start playing the game, I think, okay, you can go for this. But any player who has played at least like 2, 3, 4 servers maybe, you can easily do this with any tribe. And some of the experienced players can definitely do this if they have good management and if they have a team that are helping, then you can even make this less than 49 days, and I'm telling you it's possible. This 70 days with some help, and so on and so forth. Alright, that was it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Salute! Wow.